One of the clear highlights of the recent Cannes Yachting Festival was undoubtedly the new flagship of the Pardo fleet. Now that is a boat designed to take the elegant day boating credentials for which the established P series is justly renowned and mix those with the extra shelter, the extra four-season ability and the extra cruising credentials of the endurance boats. Now this is it, it's called the Pardo GT75 and we've come to Monaco 6 weeks after Cannes closed its doors to take this boat out on the water and see just how effective that hybrid approach has been. Now this might be a hybrid boat, but it is still a Pardo, so the day boating credentials matter a very great deal, so we'll start with those. We step onto this platform at the aft end. Well, as you can see, rigged like this is basically a telescopic passerelle lifted up to pontoon level to make disembarkation really very simple when you're moored stern to at a Mediterranean berth. But if I pop round the side and show you an alternative angle, you can imagine just how effective that is when you're out on the water as a dive platform, where you can drop it down subsurface, in which case the steps lead back up to this central platform, and use it just to extend your beach club aft, use it for water sports, for swimming. Really effective feature, that. And as you'd expect on a boat of this kind of heritage and this kind of calibre, we also have a pair of drop down bulwarks, one on either side. Now they're not particularly long, but they are relatively lofty. So of course when you fold them down, they add a decent extra beam on either side of this central sunbed. And this elevated central sunbed itself is worth a closer look because it's absolutely enormous, really wide, built-in headrests, good fore and aft length. So even though on the face of it you might think, well, that's only big enough for 6 people, you could easily fit 12 on there, no problem at all. It's absolutely vast. And beneath that, of course, we have a tender garage, big enough to accommodate a 3.7 metre tender. So of course, as a triple engine boat, we do get a V just going down into the engine bay and obscuring access to that central engine. So we also have a cutout panel in the bottom of that tender garage, just so you can access that central engine for servicing should you need to. In any case, back here at this aft platform, we also have a couple of hatches, one on either side of this central unit, for additional storage. Really lovely steelwork here. You see that all over this boat. It feels very high quality, and of course this is natural teak, untreated, sort of silvered. It feels brilliant underfoot and it looks superb. It's very nicely done. And we have a symmetrical layout here, so easy access on both sides of the boat up into the cockpit, which basically butts up against the head end of that sunbed, and is configured in the form of a large C-shaped dinette in the centre with a table that folds out on both sides, and as you can see from this gap also splits, so you can put an infill in there and create an enormous table for as many, I would say, as 10 people, perhaps even more. We have something similar in the saloon, in fact, and we'll look at that in a bit. But as I say, first we'll do the external day spaces before moving inside. Now there's the engine access, and what we have built into these dinette units down there is a fridge, a pull-out fridge, one on either side, which is very handy. And you'll notice that refrigeration is certainly not in short supply on this boat. If we move over towards the starboard side, you'll see we've got a cutout beneath that gunnel. Nice branding again, with more stainless steel trim. And in here you find 3 carbon fibre poles. And the purpose of those is to fit into these receptacles on these drop-down bulwarks, just to keep you safe when you got them folded down. But realistically, when you're out on the water and they are folded down, they pretty much operate like that aft platform there. Make great diving boards and equally lovely spots just to perch a couple of chairs and a table and have a glass of wine. So realistically, not many people are going to want to obstruct their access to the water. And in truth, that's pretty much what this boat is all about in terms of its external day space, is integration with the natural environment. That's a big thing for Pardo, and it's beautifully executed here. Looking forward again, the test boat also has this, the second helm on the starboard side. It's very simple, but it's everything you need. We've got the joystick there and the thrusters up top. Good view of the parameters of the boat, and very handy when you've got to come alongside a stern, as we have done today. Now, I've mentioned how much I enjoy this steelwork, and it really is lovely. Lovely big sunken cleats here with the Pardo logo embossed, and a couple of bars just to protect your fiberglass. The same deal for the fenders. But what you'll notice is that rather than having elevated stainless steel guardrails on these gunnels, we've gone for something much lower profile, more of these carbon fibre poles and cables, just to ease back on the bulk, preserve the purity of lines. Now, if you find that less practical than regular guardrails, there is actually a degree of practicality here too, and that's illustrated by the fillers. We've got the diesel filler here, we've got the water point here on the gunnel, and further forward we've got the waste outlet, and we have the waste outlet and the diesel fillers mimicked on the port side, so you can come alongside port or starboard too and pump out or fill up without a problem at all. There's only one water filler, that's on the starboard side, but it's not so critical, of course, because we use a much narrower gauge pipe to fill up your water than you do for the other jobs. Moving further forward again, you see we've got the skipper's side door on the starboard side here, but actually I shouldn't really call it the skipper's side door, because we've got exactly the same on the port side with the helm slap bang in the middle of the deck. From here we take a very low profile step up to the bow space, and this is quite impressive in terms of its beam, in terms of its length, and in terms of the way it's used. Under the brow of the screen we basically have another C-shaped dinette facing forward. Once again we've got fridges built into the various mouldings, and this forward section is not actually a bench seat at all, it's just an island sunbed with these excellent movable backrests weighted in the bottom, so you can shift them around wherever you want. And it basically means that with the table fitting in there, you've got room here for about 12 or 14 people. It's absolutely vast, really impressive. And it gets more impressive actually as I head further forward. Even with those seats in position and people dining further aft, you've still got a really good size of forward-facing sunbed here with a nice sort of gradient built into these backrests. Big enough, I would say, for 4 people at least. And at the forepeak, well, this is all very clean and tidy, but we also have access to the crew cabin, and this makes all kinds of sense. As you can see on the port side, we've got a pair of bunks there, very decent size. We also have some nice little port lights, so you can get a bit of ventilation and natural light should you want it, though it's clear that whoever's sleeping here does not want that. They're using a bit of cardboard as a makeshift curtain. Spinning around, well, you've got the wet room on the starboard side. There's your toilet. In fact, it's not a wet room, we've got a separate shower further aft. And in the tapering forward part, your toilet, your sink, a good size of mirror, and look at that for headroom. Absolutely enormous. Another port light, so it actually doesn't feel particularly cramped. More storage down below, and if I get rid of the door for that toilet cubicle, plenty of hand storage in there as well. Now, I appreciate that places as prosaic as anchor lockers rarely get a look in on boats like this, but this is a particularly good one. And if we open that up, you'll see that that reverse bow, as well as being very elegant, pays big dividends in terms of the volume, and it's enabled us to stow the anchor chain further forward, which has freed up this entire cylindrical locker for whatever you like. They maximise the practicality of that by sticking a good deep ladder in there, so you can sling your fenders in here, tie your lines off, safe in the knowledge you'll be able to retrieve them no problem at all. I like that a lot. In any case, we're considering the day spaces here, and we only have one more to check out. We've had a look at the enormous convertible beach club aft, and that remarkably large and accommodating bow lounge forward. So we'll head back aft and spin around and take a look at the third and final day space, which is this, the internal saloon. It's immediately clear that actually this is not huge by the standards of a 75 footer, and it was never going to be. After all, we've got that enormous bow lounge forward, we've got the big beach club, the 2-tier beach club further aft, we've got very substantial side decks on both sides, so the space, the footprint is limited, but it is very well used and the ambience is extremely attractive. Now, the basic configuration involves an L-shaped dinette on the port side, an L-shaped galley on the starboard side, a transverse cabinet further forward, and that butts up against the triple helm seats right in the centre of that deck. But if you start with that port dinette, well, it's really quite an attractive feature. Again, as in the aft cockpit, we've got a table that folds out with leaves on both sides, plus a split in the centre so you can separate it, put the infill in and really enlarge it with some freestanding furniture so you can seat as many as maybe 10 or 12 people here without obstructing this companionway for running fore and aft from the cockpit towards the helm and the accommodation. This is unusual too. If you look up, we've got a louvered section here, which means you can really fine-tune the amount of light and fresh air you get down in here. It's a rare feature. You usually see that sort of thing on fly bridges. I've never seen it in a saloon before, but it's a very welcome feature indeed. And I like this too. We have a single level threshold between the cockpit and the saloon, and the fact that that dinette extends over towards the starboard side means you can perch your bum here, a couple of people if need be, face out towards that aft cockpit and really feel like you're part of that external party, and that's a very attractive feature for me. In any case, if we spin around and look at that starboard galley, well, this is interesting because what you see here is the standard layout. The galley up here, which means you've got 3 cabins down below plus a lounge. You can also do away with the lounge down below and have 4 cabins, or you can have 2 cabins down below and the galley down. But as I say, 3 cabins down, galley up top. This is the standard configuration and it works pretty well, I have to say. I like the fact that we don't have a full height fridge freezer, because the purpose of this galley from Pardo is to preserve wide open 360 degree views, and for the most part we achieve exactly that. But I do notice that when I open this fridge up, I do trap my fingers beneath this little bit of timber, so it would be nice to see a little workaround for that. But elsewhere we get an oven there and a 4-ring electric hob on top, a 2-part sink, plenty of work surface and a good bit of storage as well as space for your various bins for recycling. And over here on this central cabinet, well, this is useful too. The boat we saw at the Cannes Yachting Festival used 2 bedrooms down below and the galley was down below, so we also had a sink built into this unit. Of course, there's no need for a sink on this particular boat because we have the galley sink just a stone's throw away here on the starboard side. But you can of course opt for a sink here. You can also opt for an ice maker and a fridge. What we have here instead is storage, and that makes good sense actually, because if we head further forward to the left hand side of the skipper's position, we've got a decent chart table there, and underneath that we've got a wine fridge, and next to that an ice maker right there. So as I say, refrigeration on this boat is very well taken care of. All that remains then is to head down to that lower deck and see what the 3 cabin standard configuration is all about. Now we access the lower deck on the starboard side, a set of steps that works its way around 90 degrees, and as it does so we go past the breaker panel and an additional electrics cabinet there. And I have to say, the fabrics, the combination of fabric and wood and stainless steel is very attractive. It feels very well built, this boat. And we land ourselves in a central lounge. Now, to make sense of the layout, there are various things on this boat, this lower deck, that are permanent. One of those is the full beam owner's midships cabin. Another is the VIP forward cabin. A third is the utility room on the port side. And a fourth is the day heads back here on the starboard side. Now, this is the region of the boat that you get to play with. So if you go for the 2 cabin layout, this entire space, this entire full beam space, uses a dinette on the starboard side and a lovely big galley on the port side with a kitchen island, and it's a gorgeous space. That is the layout that we saw at the Cannes Yachting Festival, and we kind of fell in love with that. Here though, the owner has opted for a 3rd cabin, so we get that twin on the starboard side, the dinette is shifted over to the port side, and the galley is shifted upstairs to the saloon, as we've just seen. But even so, this lounge remains a very attractive space. We've got lots of underlit LEDs. We've got these rather lovely high-level cabinets. They're not blocked off by doors, they don't hem you in, they're nice and open, and that's maximised with more steelwork and glasswork, so you can display your favourite objects, make it feel a little bit more homely when you're on a long distance cruise. Now that dinette is supplemented with, you guessed it, another fridge further forward, plus a neat little storage cabinet for your remotes and your bits and bobs. just next to that flush mounted TV on that forward bulkhead. More of this open storage. It really is very attractive, and a low level coffee table. If I move round to the starboard side, well, this twin cabin is a really good size. Big beds, a pretty generous panoramic window, decent depth to that as well. More of this lovely open shelving and a central bedside table. Plus, if I close off the access to the day heads, plenty of hanging storage with automatic LEDs. Headroom is excellent, as it is all over this boat. I reckon there's about 7 feet in here. And if we move forward past an additional storage cabinet and another flush mounted TV into the day heads itself, well, this is a really good size. I love the fact that these air conditioning vents are nice and wide and positioned very, very high up right next to the deck head, so that the air just wafts into the space instead of creating cold jets and warm spots. It's a really good size, this though. Lovely big cabinet, more storage underneath, nice big sink, good size of toilet too, and a separate shower compartment with a rain shower that actually features built-in LEDs. It's a very cool thing. And if we head back out into the central lounge, we'll head forward again, up another couple of steps, and check out the bow cabin. Now, as I say, the fact that we use a crew cabin up in the bow means that even though this is tapered, it still feels relatively beamy. We inhabit a much more voluminous section of the boat's hull, and it really shows. It's entirely symmetrical. We've got bedside tables and cabinetry on both sides, more of these open shelves, and a couple of hanging lockers. If I close the door over, move over towards the bed and look aft, you'll see we've got additional cabinets there, another built-in TV, and a good size again of ensuite. Same kind of rain shower, this time with a compartment that's big enough for 2 people to share, and a very attractive fit out, you have to say. But of course, what we really want to do is check out the owner's cabin. So we'll nip out of here and head aft into the central lounge, and in we go. And the moment you're in here, you can tell it's asymmetrical. The bed is offset to the starboard side. There's still a good space, a good deck space outboard of that to make your way to your side of the bed, plus a bedside table. But here again, the cabinetry, the storage solutions are absolutely lovely. They're everywhere and they're voluminous, but they never once feel intrusive. They never darken the light or block the view. We also have a dressing table here, really good size this. To the side of that, we have an additional cabinet with, you've guessed it, another fridge behind that door, some additional storage on the port side, and a good bit of work surface with a TV. And if I move over to the port side, well, this is a rarity even on a boat of this scale. Really good size of deck that. Plenty of space, you would think, to jump out of bed and do your stretching or your yoga should you choose. And we've got room for a really good storage unit too. This is a proper bit of hanging storage, this. Comes with a little recess for your safe and additional shelving units. And there's still a bit of space left over for this. A nice little bench seat, big enough for 2 on the port side there. Very intimate, cosy little spot with a storage space on either side and a little spot to pop your cup of tea and your newspaper. And ahead of that, of course, the ensuite facilities. Now, it's of similar proportions, similar scale, similar facilities to the ensuite facilities we saw in the VIP cabin further forward. Well, you do get a slightly more indulgent shower here with a seat presumably built from Morocco or teak, plus a little section here for probably your potions, keeping those under control. A nice big sink again, plenty more storage, some handy towel storage there too, and a similar order of facilities, as I say, to those that we saw further forward. We're out on the water now, and I've got to say the helm station on this Pardo GT75 feels fantastic for a couple of really important reasons. Now, firstly, the helm station is bang in the centre of the deck on a slightly raised plinth, We've got a big one-piece screen, wrap-around window, so visibility is fantastic. And also, on both sides of me here, we've got side doors here just to access those side decks, so it's particularly practical from that perspective too. We got the compass mounted just at the top of the screen there, again right in the skipper's eye line, so that's very practical. And we got space here for 3 nice big plotters on the main tier of the dash. The lower tier is relatively sparse, just a basic bit of switch gear. We got the thrusters on our left hand side, as well as a plotter remote, the throttles and the joystick on the right hand side. But as I say, visibility is superb. You do have to watch yourself as you're making your way from side to side, because that little step up to this helm level can be a bit of a trip hazard. I've tripped up and down that a couple of times, but it's a really nicely considered position. Now I'll stick it on single lever before we get going, and we'll see how she performs. Now we've got a triple engine rig here. The standard units are a triple rig of Volvo Penta IPS 1050s. That's 3 D13 800s, but we've got the upgraded version here. We've got triple 1350s, so 3,000 horsepower in total. And as we move up onto the plane, it's not so much the grunt that leaves a mark, it's the fact that the transition is so extraordinarily flat. And that's a particularly welcome thing, because it means that if I want to, I don't have to get up onto the plane to be comfortable. I can just ease her back before we get up there, just sit around about 11 knots. And at that pace, we're drinking a total of just 66 litres per hour, so 6 litres per nautical mile. Now we've got a big old fuel tank here, I should say a pair of fuel tanks. We've got the main tank deep down ahead of the engines, very central, just to put the weight exactly where it needs to be, and that's part and parcel of why we're coming onto the plane so flat. And we've got the daily tank, as they call it, back there in the engine room, totaling around about 4,300 litres, 4,100 litres I should say. So we've got about, with 20% redundancy in the tank, about 3,300 litres to play with. So at 11 knots, as I say, lovely and flat, very comfortable, nice fine entry. And we've got a range of about 550 nautical miles, which is quite extraordinary, really generous. And that kind of betrays what this is all about. It's not just a day boat, and I know Pardo's very famous for its day boats, very elegant ones too, but this is designed to be a proper cruiser, and it's already proving that. Now something else I like is the fact that this is a very refined boat. You might not quite be getting that because we've got the aft doors open just to keep everyone comfortable on board. But the decibel readings are way down in the low to mid 60s for most of the cruising band, and that's just fantastic for a long passage. Now pushing on through, we're up on the plane now. Bet you didn't notice that transition either, did you? We're doing 20 knots, and that basically doubles our fuel flow in terms of our litres per nautical mile. So it's 12 litres per nautical mile, so we've got a range still at 20 knots at 275 miles. Again, pretty impressive that. And if we push on again right through to 30 knots, and that increases to about 16 litres per nautical mile, and right through to the top end of about 34 knots, 16.5, 16.8. So our range reduces to about 200 nautical miles, but that's the lowest it gets, and that, as I say, is very impressive. Now I should point out that the reason we're not going faster than that 34 knots is the fact that we've got 14 people on board here today. We've got full fuel tanks, pretty much full water tanks too, and that's 1,100 litres. As I say, it's very well tooled up for cruising long distance. So while 34 knots is not bad, we would expect closer to 37, 38 knots in principle with this engine rig. Now let's just swing around a little to starboard and see how she handles. There's a nice bit of hill there, and there's a really nice soft entry from that bow as well. I suspect in a livelier sea it would be quite a wet boat because you don't have much in the way of a bow flare, but we do have that ride softness. We'll swing around to port as well, and in both directions you do have to dip down a bit because we're bang in the centre of the boat, as I say. But visibility really is, for the most part, very good indeed. Now actually, while I'm talking about visibility, That bow lounge is quite an interesting feature. With those big old movable backrests sitting on that sunbed, I can't actually see my forepeak, and I do like to be able to see my forepeak just to see how it's interacting with the waves. That said, as I say, they are movable, so that's not a problem. And in spite of the fact that I'm giving this boat a decent little sea trial in 2-foot waves rolling in here, already 2 or 3 people have made their way forward to that bow lounge. So that just tells you how reassuring, how confidence inspiring that softness of ride is. This new GT75 then is going to be a really easy boat to like for all kinds of boaters. You've got those traditional Pardo outdoor day spaces, both at the bow and at the stern, plus to a lesser degree the sheltered space in that saloon up top. But you've also got some really voluminous and really flexible cruising accommodation. You can have the standard fit out with 3 cabins like this. You can have 4 cabins if you choose, but having seen the 2 cabin layout at the Cannes Yachting Festival with that lovely central lounge with the kitchen island operating as the hub of the lower deck, well, for me, if you can afford to do without the 3rd and 4th cabins, that makes all kinds of sense. However you choose to spec it, this is a really good boat for day boating, it's a really good boat for cruising, it's a really good boat to drive, and it's a really good boat to look at. All of which leads me to suggest that this new flagship of the fleet is actually one of the most broadly appealing and multi-talented platforms we've ever seen from Pardo. Whether you agree with that or not, tell us what you think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit the like button, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, then please do subscribe to the Motorboat and Yachting channel.